Okay, cool. So let's go into your story, Cass. So, Cassandra, Cass, we are so inspired by your story of how you are doing what you do. So, could you tell me the story of you?
Oh, thank you. Well, that's very nice. I always feel a little bit embarrassed because So They Can is about everyone really on the ground and around me. All I'm good at doing is getting great people around me, actually. But it's lovely and it's an honor to be the spokesperson for So They Can. So They Can started about 15 or 16 years ago now. My background's actually law, and so I have had very little knowledge about international development, and still have a feeling of imposter syndrome, to be honest. But I did medical law for a long time, working in hospitals, supporting end of life decision making for doctors and patients and things. And I loved the human connection. But when I started having children, I started thinking about the children in Africa that I had met when I was backpacking through Africa when I was after university. And I'd always kind of felt very connected with them, and wanted to try and support them in some way. So, yeah, about 16, 17 years ago now, I started So They Can. And it was actually a result of, I watched that film Hotel Rwanda. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was up in the middle of the night with one of my babies, and it came on and I started watching it, and it just really triggered in me that just guilt at the atrocities that are allowed to go on around the world. So I jumped on a plane and I went to Africa looking for some sort of project to get involved in, and I happened to be there in 2007, just after their elections, when there was in Kenya. When there was extreme violence, with one tribe looking to massacre another tribe, so they weren't around to vote. So when I got there, there were a number of what they call IDPs, or internally displaced persons camps, and they were refugees in their own country. The United Nations have given them all tents, and so I went to see a number of these camps, and they were all pretty horrendous. But one in particular really inspired me. They were very organized. And they were kind of waiting for someone like me to turn up and say, how can I help? And rather than ask for sort of food or money, as others had due to necessity, they had this whole strategy and plan. And they walked me to a piece of land, a 5 acre piece of land, 2 kilometers from their IDP camp, and said, will you help us build a school? Because the children in our camp, of which there were about 7,000 children, couldn't access school because all the local public schools were totally overcrowded and under-resourced. So I liked that deep impact story of education and that sort of sustainability piece around education. So I spent many hours in a very cold corridor floor of the government, until they finally met with me, and I convinced them to donate the land and partner with us as So They Can, as I set up, and to become the first public-private partnership in education in Africa.
Mm. And
And that, yeah.
moving to today, right? Can you give me a few examples of what have been achieved so far?
Yeah, cool. So, and thanks to a long-term partnership with you guys at B1G1, we have achieved quite a bit. So, as I said, there's now 45,000 children in our communities across our 51 schools. We have one of our big focuses, we have 10 education projects, and one of them is keeping girls in school. Um, and children's rights. So one of our big focuses has been stopping female genital cutting and child marriage, which is very prevalent in our communities, and supporting children to get to the end of secondary school and sensitizing families on the importance of education rather than selling them off as an 8-year-old for 2 or 3 goats, because then if you can get them to the end of secondary school, they will provide a lot greater income for the family than that. So something we're really proud of is that we've increased the girls' attendance rates in Baringo, our third community in Kenya, by 76% since we've been working there over the last 7 years. So 76% more girls are now going to school because of So They Can's work. Over all of our projects and schools across Kenya and Tanzania, we've increased the attendance rate of children by 46%. And that's a big key. It's a key thing for us. If we can get them to start at primary school, then we tend to keep them to the end of secondary school, through the sensitization work we do with the families around the importance of education, through the results that come through through us increasing the infrastructure at our schools so that there are more classrooms, that the children can actually not learn under trees, that they've got access to water, clean water, which they'll take back to their families as well. We've ensured that with the schools that we work with, we have what we call a 3-phase development model. So we will go in for, and we will commit to an MOU with the schools for about 8 years. And that is, first year is to see if they've got enough skin in the game. So we will just see if they bring the mud bricks to help build some of the construction that we have to do, if they turn up to parent-teacher meetings, if the school management committee is active. They all pass that with flying colours, and then we will continue to our second stage, which is our core stage, where we throw our 10 education projects at them, which is infrastructure, keeping girls in school, let's learn, so focusing on reading, writing, arithmetic, teacher development, so we train the teachers at these schools as well. The My Voice, which is all about children's rights, and that they can understand that internationally and nationally they're not allowed to be cut and sold, they're not allowed to be abused or beaten, and that they, once they understand that right, they're empowered and they stand up for themselves, which is really amazing to see. So then we do that for about 6 years until we move into our 2 years about what we call our sustain stage, which everyone knows about. But because we've sort of economically empowered the community around the school through our community development projects, which is a lot of farming, then we can slowly exit from a funding point of view, knowing the school community will continue on with that income generating activities that we would have worked with them to create over that period. So yeah, so from a statistics point of view, 46% more children across the board are going to school, 76% more girls. We've trained over 2,000 teachers. We have a teachers training college that we constructed as well, and have now, it's fully sustained in the sustained stage, and the government now run that teachers college, and that educates around 250 teachers every year that then go and are disseminated into public schools around Tanzania as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Did you actually imagine this when you started?
No. I don't know. I thought I'd help this poor IDP camp and build a few classrooms and continue on with my medico-legal work, but no, that didn't work out quite like that. So yeah, it has grown, but I mean, you know what it's like, Masami. You go over there and people will be telling you, you know, just don't take on anything more, but you get there and you see the need and you dance with these amazing people over there and you think, how can I not try and do more? So and it's so rewarding to be.
And what would your family members say about what you are doing? Because I'm sure it will take a lot of your time, right, to focus on the things that improve the livelihood of families in other parts of the world too. But then how does that impact your family?
That's a good question. And I often and have often worried about that. You know, I was, when I started, a mother to 4 very young children. Rocco was like 6 months old when I first went to Africa.
Wow, really? 6 months old?
Yeah, yeah. So I've often felt, am I neglecting them and I've been a terrible mother? But I've asked them on a few occasions, and the first time I asked them, Rocco was probably 2 or 3, and the eldest Mia was probably 8. And I can remember sitting them down and saying, is this too much, me going overseas? And should I step back from so they can? And it's always stayed with me, their response. They were kind of horrified. They were like, what do you mean? So they can, as part of who we are and what we do, they all sponsor a child and they write letters and they come with me every now and then when I can take them. And they were horrified at the thought. They didn't really see it as you losing their mum. They just, I suppose they saw it as sharing their mum. So I was really,
Wow.
glad and grateful for their response and that they saw it that way. And I thought it was therefore contributing to them as, you know, just really good global citizens and people of the world. So I was happy with that. And it's gone on to shape them a little bit. My 2 older girls now are, Mia's 23 and Tess is 21, and they're both doing law. One's just finished a degree and they want to do international law, and they love coming to Africa. And yeah, so I used to worry about it, and now I think it was a really, I'm grateful for the opportunity. to
I'm
share that.
very grateful for your children. Sorry, I'm tearing up because I feel I probably felt the same about our work too. That we focus so much on work, and are we being a good parents ourselves, right? Like, but I think what your kids said is profound because they think about sharing their mom with the world and with
Yeah.
other kids, right? Like, and if they could be so sharing of their own family, then maybe the world can be more sharing.
That
We
would be
can all be more
nice.
sharing.
I know, I agree. If everyone, and I think that's why it was so profound for me when they said that, because it was a generous thing, but it was also an intelligent response of they have so much. So they have a lot to share. They are able to share. And I think they could only really see that when they understood how little
Mm,
children that we work with in
mm,
Africa have.
mm.
And then that empathy that you talk about, they had empathy and they wanted to help them. So yeah, it did make me feel it did make me decide to get rid of the guilt. It's pointless. It doesn't help anyone. And and they have a sense of pride of what we're doing over there and they're part of it. So
Mm.
you should too. You should definitely too, because I don't know if you've been to Ukraine. I'm desperate to ask you all about that and how it was, but they must be so proud of you. So because how many children do you have, Sammy?
I have two of
Yeah,
my
they would
own.
be so proud of who you are and what you're doing. Um, and yeah, yeah. I'm lucky. One of my inspirations was my mother, actually. And it's so cliche, I know, but she just so was. She was an amazing human being, and was she born in London, did medicine, was a doctor, and came over here with my father back to New Zealand. Turned up, knew absolutely no one in, archaic New Zealand back there. As a medical practitioner, she did obstetrics, and she tells very sad stories about how she was criticized a lot by other women for being a working mother, and so she felt this guilt a lot. Um, and I can remember, actually, interestingly, I've never thought about that, but I can remember saying the same thing to her. My sort of kids, I was just so proud of mum and what she did. She then, when she had children, because obstetrics and delivering babies with 4 young kids is hard, she had 4 as well. She changed to psychiatry, so it was more of a day practice. But she spent a lot of time. I only discovered this when mum died 2 years ago. A woman came to her funeral and told me she worked very closely getting young women who were desperate for abortions to Australia to have an abortion back in those days, and caring for women in that regard, and working in that whole sort of feminist movement. And I didn't know any of that. She didn't tell me any of that. So yeah, I was just very proud of her, and she inspired me, and I loved that she was a working woman. So I think we should get rid of the guilt and not anymore. I think.
Yeah. So this as a great start, I'm looking forward to connecting with all different women in different locations throughout today. And I believe that later I will probably be having a conversation with one of the team members you work with on the ground. So thank you so much for once again doing amazing work and inspiring us all.
Thank you. And I look forward to hearing sort of more about you and
Yeah,
Ukraine.
please keep following.